So growing up, I didn't think that I liked meat. I didn't see what all the fuss was about. It just wasn't that good, in my opinion. And if you knew my family's culinary choices, you could probably figure out why. So one Sunday after church, my dad declared to the family, "I'm going to take us all out to lunch." And we're like, "Yeah! We never go out to lunch. This will be great." And then he proceeded to drive us to the local car dealership because they were handing out free hot dogs. Yeah. So the salesman comes up to him and is like, "Can I show you around?" He's like, "No, we're just here for the hot dogs." I'm like, So when you're the type of family who considers free hot dogs at a car dealership going out to lunch, you can imagine the type of meat experiences I had growing up, and why I lean towards vegetarianism today. So we tended to eat the cheaper cuts of meat. And then my mom, who did 100% of the cooking growing up, she only liked what she would call well done. I would call overcooked meat. And so for the first 14, 15 years of my life, that was my experience with meat, period. That's it. Until one day, my uncle invited us over for a barbecue, and he was grilling up pork chops, and I was like, "Oh no, pork chops, those are terrible. They're really hard, and who likes this?" But these pork chops were like 2 inches thick and perfectly cooked. And I took one bite, and I was like, "Oh, who knew? I like meat. Now I see." I'd seen the light. Of course, then I moved to Texas and was introduced to brisket and a medium rare filet, to the glory of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, world without end. Amen. And I repented of my past. So it wasn't until later, significantly later, that I even considered some of the broader implications of eating meat. It wasn't until later that I actually started to ask questions like, well, how does eating large quantities of red meat, how does eating red meat fit into the good life, or life with God, or life of the world? So for the most part, Americans don't even like to think about our meat. This was recently highlighted in an Instagram post that kind of went viral. It was from a butcher, and here's the actual post here. It's a goat at a petting farm, and the write-up reads like this: "Ever been at a petting farm and wondered what these animals you're feeding taste like? Straight from the petting farm into our back door while stocks last. See if endless cuddles makes your food taste better." So I read that, and I thought that was hilarious, personally. I was just like this. But I guess some people got really, really upset, to which the butcher replied, "Where do you think meat comes from?" Indeed, it seems that most of us do not want to know. So consuming red meat is not just a dietary choice. It is, and has always been, fraught with moral, economic, social, environmental, political issues. Not to mention the now well-established health implications of heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, and all-cause mortality. So eating large quantities of red meat on a regular basis will be the death of you. And if it doesn't kill you, it's still unavoidably personal. So at Duke, they have a professorship that is focused on this, believe it or not. So Norman Wiersbe is a professor. He's a theologian and an expert in agriculture. And he convincingly argues that consuming the flesh of another creature, hear this language, is arguably one of the most intimate things you can do. It is a complete sharing of self. You give yourself for me, and I take you into myself, and I live and move and breathe because of you. Now, this is not to say that eating meat is necessarily immoral, but it is weighty. It is significant. It's not nothing. Something died that you might live. Its flesh literally becomes part of you. And it's so awkwardly intimate that most of us rather just never think about this. So Wiersbe describes how when he has people over to his house, he likes to acknowledge before God and these witnesses the life that was given that they might eat. So he will pray something like this. This is an actual prayer. He says, "Father, thank you for this chicken that was raised at the Johnson's farm. Thank you for its life, that it was slaughtered plucked, cooked, and now gives its flesh to us that we might enjoy dinner together and make its flesh part of our flesh. Amen. He said, for some reason, his guests often lose their appetite after that. So since forever, eating red meat has been about more than a dietary preference. Like it pulls on like nearly every aspect of our lives, like the moral, the political, the economic, the social, the environmental, the relational, the psychological, the physiological, the religious. It's almost like eating the flesh of another that you might live has a deeper unseen significance in this world. It's almost as if there's a spiritual reality at work underneath this. And while we as a community of like Jesus followers and people who are called to be stewards of God's creation, stewards of everything, including the animals, we probably should think through all of these aspects at some point. We should probably think about what does it mean as a follower of Jesus and a steward of creation to do this. Today, though, I want to focus on this deeper underlying spiritual reality. Here's the question. Is there a spiritual significance to eating red meat, or am I just making too much of this? Like, according to the scriptures, can a medium rare filet teach us something about God and about ourselves? That's the question I want to ask. Now, let me give you a quick disclaimer here. I'm not here trying to promote the Jordan Peterson all beef diet, nor am I pushing veganism. I'm really not. Though you really shouldn't do the all beef diet. That's just dumb. Yeah. My aim is something a little bigger. It's that whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all to the glory of God. My hope is that you will not be satisfied with simple, superficial answers about politics or environment or ethics or physiological or health. But you will not be satisfied until you come to the spiritual reality that is found in Jesus Christ alone. That even in a steak, you'll see Christ. So this is our last week in the series called Taste and See, where we're borrowing that line from David, Psalm 34, that it's not enough to know about God, you have to taste and see. You have to experientially know God. So we're exploring, like, what does it mean to taste and see a God that you can neither taste nor see? Now, unfortunately, we did not have the budget to cook up enough steaks for everyone. So I volunteered. I asked Cliff if he could cook up one really good steak for me, and I'll tell you how good it is, okay? I'm so sorry, but it's true. Our text for today is going to be Leviticus chapter 3. That'll be our main course. But first we need to set the table and appreciate what God's up to before we can tuck into this feast. So if you want to go ahead and jump there, it's Leviticus chapter 3, page 80 in our pew Bible. But let's set the table, and this will probably take 8 to 10 minutes here. There's a lot going into this before we get there. In Genesis chapter 2, we don't have to belabor this because we've been here a few times. This is the scene where God makes the man, Adam, and blesses him, puts him in the garden in this good creation. And once he puts him in the garden, what's the very first thing God wants to talk to him about? Food. What's on the menu? You are free to eat from any tree in the garden. This is what's on the menu. You may eat freely. The emphasis is on God's abundance, his lavish abundance. You can eat whatever you want, but there's one thing that's not on the menu. But you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you will certainly die. Not just die, but in Hebrew, die. It's doubled, so it's really bad. Then we skip to Genesis chapter 9, and God has hit the reset button on creation. Boop. The flood has washed creation clean. Noah steps off the ark, and he has a new story, a new humanity, a new creation is beginning right there with Noah. And what's the first thing that God wants to talk to Noah about? What's on the menu? Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. Steak, it's on the menu now. Meat is on the menu. You can eat it. But there's one thing, he says, that is now not on the menu. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. Blood is not on the menu. So last summer, Jenny and I went with some friends to Salisbury, England. And we stayed at this hotel, really quaint little hotel, and they offered a full English breakfast. I don't know if you've ever had that before, but I was just so giddy excited. I had to try everything. Here's a picture of my plate. This is just like one of the plates that I got. It was amazing. And I had to try everything. I was like, oh, there's mushrooms and tomatoes and beans. Who eats beans for breakfast? The British do. And what is this? This is black pudding. I've got to try it. I've heard all about this. So I taste it and I'm like, this is quite good. But then I got curious, like, what exactly is black pudding? Yeah. And then I made the mistake of Googling it. Yeah. It's basically like lard mixed with blood and then cooked into a sausage. I was eating a slice of lard with blood. So, the ancient heathen pagans of the world, like the British, regularly consumed blood. So in the ancient Near East, it was popularly believed that consuming the blood of an animal was to take its life force into you, and you could somehow control its life and make it, you now have the life of whatever you just ate inside of you. And God said, yeah, it didn't work like that. I give life, I take life. Life is not yours to control. So that's the one thing that's off the menu. Blood is off the menu. And in the scriptures, this distinction then between blood and meat. You can eat the meat, but not the blood. This distinction between what happens with the blood, the significance of blood, and the significance of meat takes on this deeper meaning. It signifies something about what it means to be in relationship with God. So, Genesis chapter 15, God wants to formally, permanently establish a relationship with Abraham. So what does he do? He says, Abraham, I want you to go take all of these animals. He lists them all out, and I want you to literally cut them in half and lay them in two halves on either side. We saw this picture back in the fall. It looks something like this. And there's this stream, literally this stream of blood between them. And then God himself announces his promises over Abraham. This is what I swear to you. This is what I'll do for you. And then in this flaming pot symbolizing God's presence, he passes between the bloody carcasses, between the dead animals. He passes over the blood. And so in that, he is saying this is called the walk of death. He's saying what's happened to these animals, may it happen to me if I do not fulfill my word. That's how a covenant relationship, a formal oath relationship was formed at the time. In fact, in Hebrew, it picks up this language. You do not form a relationship. You do not form a covenant. You cut a covenant. Something has to die. There has to be blood shed. And to this day, there's examples of this. You've probably seen like someone like slit their hand, or seen it at least in movies where they slit their hand. They make an oath and they slit their hand to say, in blood, I'm doing this in blood. It's a blood covenant. And in some cultures, you slit your hand and then you shake the bloody hands. So your blood mixes and we're blood brothers. That's where you get this idea that it's a covenant in blood. For Abraham to receive the sign of this covenant then, God just said, I swear all this to you. For him to receive the sign of the covenant, he had to shed some blood. He had to do some cutting of his own. It's called circumcision, Genesis chapter 17. And then, now that you're formally in a relationship with God, what happens when God shows up to your tent unannounced? Well, Genesis chapter 18, this is what happens. You say, let's kill the fattened calf. We're going to grill some steaks. God's come over. We're going to bake as much bread, more bread than we can possibly eat. And we are going to eat like kings because God came to my house. And after you grill steaks with God, well, Abraham's called a friend of God. That's what it is. So this is what it means to be a friend of God. You eat with God. So get the connection here. The blood, the oaths, the sacrifice makes way for a relationship with God, friendship with God. So the blood is the oath. The oath is taken in the blood, and then the relationship with God is at the table. It's the taste, the experience of steaks. So the theologian John Mark Hicks points out that this is the first notes of a melody that will play again and again and again throughout the scriptures. And he helpfully gives us language on this. He calls it the altar and the table. So at the altar, where the blood is shed, you are invited into a relationship with God through the blood. But then at the table, you're invited to experientially know God's lavish goodness for you. It is a taste of friendship, a taste of fellowship, a taste of belonging and acceptance and celebration. The altar is a place where blood is shed. The table is a place where steaks are enjoyed. The altar is a place of sacrifice and confession and humility and mourning and letting go and death. The table It's a place of celebration and belonging and joy and wholeness and receiving life. The altar is a place where we enter into relationship with God, and the table is where we experience life with God. So we see this over and over again through the scriptures. Exodus chapter 12, which we've covered multiple times, the story of the Exodus. How is God going to save these slaves out of slavery and make them into his treasured possession? Well, you kill the lamb. You catch its blood. You paint the blood on the post and lintel of your house. You enter in under that. You enter in under the blood of the lamb. And now you're saved. You're saved by the blood of the lamb. So when the angel of death comes, it passes over your house. But it doesn't stop there. Then you enter into the house. If you want to make this long journey with God, well, then you have to eat up. You have to feast on the lamb. You have to eat the lamb. And then God gives them very explicit instructions there. The feast is then joined with the story of salvation. So while you're eating, you're supposed to tell the story of how you were once slaves, but God set you free. And this is how you were to experientially know the saving work of God in your life. First, you go under the blood, and then you eat this meal, and you tell this story at the table. It's from the altar to the table. Do you hear it? Exodus chapter 24. God is finalizing the Mosaic covenant, the covenant that would last, that starts with Moses and keeps on going even to the Jewish people, to Jesus Christ. God's finalizing this relationship with his people. And then what does Moses do? He builds an altar. They kill a bunch of sacrifices, shed a bunch of blood, and then we read Exodus 24:7. Then Moses took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. And they responded, "We will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey." So this scene right here is when I'm performing a wedding, and I stop everything, and I say, I want you to face me. Because as God's representative, before God and these witnesses, I'm going to ask you, do you take this person to be your lawfully wedded husband, wife, to have and hold, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer? And if they don't say to me, as God's representative, I do, I'm not doing the wedding. We're calling it off right there. This is the vow that you're stating before God. So God just asked him, do you take them? And he said, I do. And I do. Praise be to God. Amen to that. Thank you, Cliff. All right, I'm supposed to let it rest. All right, not yet. But what happens next, then, after they take their vows? This happens. Then Moses took the blood from the sacrifices and sprinkled it on the people. He dips a hyssop in it, and he's splashing the people. The people are now literally covered in blood. And he says, this is the blood of the covenant. This is the blood of a relationship. You've just entered into a relationship with the Lord that the Lord has made with you in accordance with these words. Because you stated this vow, you agreed to be in relationship with God, you are now covered in the blood, and you're in. Then, still dripping with blood, they're invited to eat with God. And they saw God, and they ate, and they drank. So get the connection here. The blood is shed at the altar, and the steaks are eaten at the table. This connection between being invited into relationship with God and then being invited into an experience of his lavish goodness. And this pattern then of the altar and the table is then set for God's people into God's law. It becomes part of the rhythm of life for God's people. And we see it described and enacted in Leviticus chapter 3. Leviticus chapter 3, God is going to invite us over for dinner. It starts like this. Leviticus chapter 3, if your offering is a fellowship offering, and then it goes on. So right here, this is the third of 5 major offerings or sacrifices that God's people are to bring to the tabernacle, later the temple, to live in relationship with God. So the Hebrew word isn't literally fellowship there, though. It's shalom. It's literally plural. It's shaloms. So this is a shalom's offering. If you remember last week, the plural of amplification, where it wasn't just oil, but it was oils. Well, this is the plural of amplification. In Hebrew, they intensify terms by multiplying it. And this offering is the offering of many shaloms. Sorry for the smoke in here. A little bit sorry. I'm actually not. Why don't you open the back windows? Might help air it out a little. Thanks, guys. So what is shalom? Shalom has multiple meanings. Like it could be like shalom, my friend, which means be well. Or it could be the sharing of lives, or like casseroles in a church case a lot of times. It's fellowship can be the sense. But it's usually translated peace, as in the absence of strife or conflict. And all of that's true. Shalom is all of these things, but that's not enough. Shalom is a word that captured the imagination of the Hebrew people, and it points us to something so much greater than all of these things. The Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament helpfully describes it like this. It says, completeness, wholeness, harmony, fulfillment are closer to the meaning. Implicit in shalom is the ideal of unimpaired relationships, things between you and me that are good, with others, and fulfillment of one's undertakings. The things that I'm trying to do in life, I'm actually achieving. So, what is shalom? It's when you look forward to going to work. Because you're actually getting somewhere, making things happen. You're making a difference. You're finding fulfillment in what you do. And when you love to come home at night, because when you come home, your home is just an oasis where you're with the people that you so dearly love. It's when everyone leaves the dinner table, not just with a full stomach, but with a full heart. It's when your life is overflowing with those deeply intimate relationships where you are known and knowing others. It's where you just happen to be at the right place to help someone else out, and you can feel like God put me here. This was a God-ordained moment. It's when your finances and your house and your relationships and your career and your health and your relationships are all in sync. It's when you are driving home a couple nights ago, and it was one of the most extraordinary sunsets I've ever seen. We ranked them in our household. We ranked it as number 2, actually. Second best we've been. So when you get a taste of that, when you experience such goodness, that you just have to say thank you to someone, to something. You can't help yourself. You experience such goodness, you have to say thank you. Who do you say thank you to? What do you do? Well, this is what you do. You offer a shalom offering, or a offering of thanksgiving. If your offering is a shalom offering, and you offer an animal from the herd, whether male or female, you are to present it before the Lord, an animal without defect, unblemished. You are to lay your hands on the head of the offering, slaughter it at the entrance to the tent of meeting, the tabernacle. Then Aaron's sons, the priest, shall splash the blood against the sides of the altar, bloody. From the fellowship offering, you are to bring a food offering to the Lord. The Lord gets a portion. The internal organs and all the fat that is connected to them, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver, which you will remove with the kidneys. And this is why no one ever reads the book of Leviticus. Then Aaron's sons are to burn it on the altar on top of the burnt offering that is lying on the wood burning. It is a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. So let's step by step imagine this. You had something happen in your life that was weighty, that you're like, God bless me. I experienced God in this moment. So you choose an animal from the herd. So it could be a cow, a sheep, or a goat, depending on the different expense levels there, what you want to spend on this. You bring it to the tabernacle, the place of meeting, God's presence, and then you lay your hands on its head. You personally identify with that animal, that unblemished animal. And then this is the part where traditionally you pray, or probably more technically, using the language of my charismatic friends, you testify. You testify about what God's done in your life. This is the part where you say, God, I have experienced your goodness. And I don't know what else to do but to tell everyone about it. But to come here to experience it with you. And this is the part where throughout the Psalms, we actually have this recorded in the Psalms. Many of the Psalms we think were written for this very moment when the person's standing with their hands on the head of a sacrifice reciting. So Psalm 100, we think, is from this very moment. You might know it. Shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to the King. So before that was a 1990s Christian mega hit, we think that that was a prayer given at a shalom offering. Psalm 107, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Tell what God has done for you. Let them sacrifice thank offerings and tell of his works. Let them exalt him in the assembly of the people. And then with these words still on your lips, you take the knife and you slit its throat. And the priest then catches the blood and takes that blood, dips the hyssop in, and sprinkles it on the altar. The blood is separated from the meat. The blood is not yours. It's the life, and it belongs to God. And after you finish slaughtering it, you are then to eat it. Right then, right there, in the tabernacle, in the presence of God. But get this. You aren't the only one eating it, remember? A portion of it goes to the Lord. Now, the ancient Jews were not stupid. They knew that God did not technically need to eat. But they did set aside symbolically a portion, the best part, the fat and the long lobe of the liver, I guess. And they put it on the altar, but they didn't just put it on the altar. It's very specific in its language here. Look at this in verse 5. It says, then you are to take it, burn it on the altar on top of the burnt offering. And this has deep symbolism here. The burnt offering is also called the whole burnt offering or the Holocaust. And it is the offering of surrender. It's the offering where you say, I give everything I have, Lord. It's yours. I give myself to you. And then the whole offering is placed upon the altar and consumed in the fires and goes up a pleasing aroma to God. God just said, you can only eat at my table after that. So get the symbolism. This feast with God can only be experienced after you surrender. This feast with God can only be experienced after you let go, after you give up control. And then God gets his part, the priests get their part, and then you get the rest. In chapter 7 of Leviticus, we get some specific details on this sacrifice. It says, the sacrifice shall be eaten on the day they offer it, but anything left over may be eaten on the next day. Any meat of the sacrifice left until the third day must be burned. So you are to eat like it's your job for 2 full days, and then you burn the leftovers. So this is the point when you realize that God is not inviting you to a worship service. God is inviting you over for dinner. Holy cow. That's what worship tastes like. Praise God. This is when you realize that worship doesn't just look like singing or preaching. It looks like this and like this. So I want you to think about this. This is an enormous amount of meat. Whether you kill a lamb, goat, or a cow. I grew up on a sheep farm, so I know a little bit about this. If you kill a lamb, it will feed at least 40 up to 60 people. And by people, I mean Americans who are like trained at eating large quantities of red meat. If you kill a cow, it will feed 300 to 400 people. Now, we're talking ancient Israelites here for whom eating any type of meat was a rare treat. If you remember from a few weeks ago, we talked about in ancient Israelite agricultural standards, the average Israelite would have a caloric deficit for 6 months out of the year. For 6 months out of the year, they were like starving. They almost never ate meat. Red meat was a few times a year reserved for feasts, weddings, and those life-changing moments. Like when you thought your son was dead, but then you just found out he's alive. So kill the fattened calf. We're going to celebrate. Like when God himself shows up to your tent. That's when you eat red meat. And steak was a taste then of fellowship, of friendship, a taste of celebration and joy. Like when you come to the Lord's table, that's what it should taste like. It should taste like steak. So once my uncle shot a deer, and he was out with a big hunting party with some friends, and he brought it home. He's like, I can't bring all this home with me. So he left us like, I don't know, 20 pounds of venison or something. We had it all in the freezer. And we ate like venison steak and venison sausage and venison chili. We even made venison lasagna, which is Terrible, terrible idea. Don't do that. And we ate venison until we couldn't eat anymore for months. Now imagine you're an ancient Israelite. You just slaughtered an entire cow. And God says, you can eat it today or tomorrow. On the third day, I want you to burn it all. He just set a timer. What are these ancient rural people going to do with that quantity of food? Have you ever been to Shady Maple? Yeah, I imagine something like that. Yeah, they're going to eat and eat and eat until they can't see anymore. So for 2 full days, you are going to bring in all your friends and family in the very presence of God, and you're going to eat the best food you've had in a long, long time, more food than you know what to do with, and you're going to laugh, and you're going to sing, and you're going to dance, and you're going to share stories about what God's done in your life. That is the peace offering. That's the fellowship offering. That's the offering of wholeness, of many shaloms. It's a taste of what it's like to be invited to God's table. When you have dinner at God's house, that's what it's like. And God says, I want you to do that regularly. Now let's ask a few questions. What does eating enormous amounts of barbecue have to do with experientially knowing God? Right? What is this? What is this? Isn't that gluttony? What are we talking about here, Paul? Well, it's important to set it in context. We don't have exactly the same context, but I think there's still some truth to this. That at least in the scriptures in the ancient Near East, meals were the center and consummation of relationship. It's where you experience relationship. It's where you experience friendship and partnership, and husbands and wives experience familial life. So if you want to be part of the family of God, you have to show up to dinner. If you want to know what it's like to be a child of the King, you have to eat at his table. And eating with God, it is a taste of life with God. The table is the place where you know who you are and whose you are. Where you know that you're really known and that you really belong. It's where you meet God and meet one another. So why does God then want them to burn the leftovers? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, a whole cow could feed a family. Practically speaking, in that ancient world, a whole cow could feed a family for a year. Like, if you dried the beef or salted it or did something, so to say you have to blow it all in 2 days and burn the rest, that makes no sense. It's not logical. It's unjustifiable. It's unexplainable. The math doesn't work. It's gratuitous. What a waste. And that seems to be the point. You see, God, he wants us to know that he doesn't just give us what we need. He likes to lavish good gifts on his children. He likes to give us abundantly more than we can ask or imagine. He wants to invite us to feast in the presence of our enemies and pour our cup until it overflows. He not only gives us like life and breath and sunshine and flowers and exquisite sunsets and that first sip of coffee in the morning. In the fullness of time, he would give us his very son. That the infinite, all-glorious, all-good God of the universe would humble himself, suffer, and die on a cross for me. That's not logical. Like, how do you justify that? How do you explain that? Like, the math doesn't work. It is prodigal. It is gratuitous. It is reckless. Like, why would God die for me? And see, according to like Matthew and Luke and Paul and the author of Hebrews, well, that's kind of the point. You see, all of these sacrifices are pointing to something greater. This is like that. They're pointing us to Christ. It's a foreshadow that it's preparing. If you want to taste, prepare your heart to taste for the real feast. For Jesus Christ, you have to learn how to feast with God. So, if you're God, and you want to take these ancient Israelite slave people, and you want them to begin to experience generosity and the gratuitous goodness of God, this overwhelming love of God that they're eventually going to experience in Jesus Christ, what do? Well, he tells them, I want you to slaughter an entire cow, and I want you to cook up 300 pounds of beef. I'm going to set a timer. We got 2 days. 2 days. And what do you think they're going to do? We got 2 days to eat 300 pounds of perfectly cooked fillets. What are we going to do? And I'll tell you what they do. They become like God, insanely generous. If you have 300 pounds of perfectly cooked beef and you know you've got to burn it in 2 more days, what do? You say, you got to come. You got to come. You got to try this. You got to come. You got to come too. You too. I don't even know who you are. Come here. I want you to taste this because you don't want any of that luxurious goodness to go to waste. You want to share it with everyone. You become like God. That seems to be the point. So if you're sitting there thinking, Anderson, you are making way too big a deal of this. Weren't you vegan at one time? It's true, I was for about 1.5 years. I've repented again. If you're thinking like, do you really want people to think that steaks are the experience of God's goodness? My answer would be, well, kinda. Yes and no. We can't lose the fact that as good as a steak is, it's just a symbol. It's just a metaphor. It's just a sign. Like this is like that. So eating a good steak doesn't make you a friend of God any more than putting this ring on makes you a husband of Jenny. Doesn't work like that. It's just a symbol that points to a greater reality. So in the end, steaks are not the point. Jesus is. The lavish celebration of feasting on endless steaks with friends is kind of like an ancient treasure map. It shows us the way to a field where there is a pearl of great price buried. And if you surrender, if you let go of everything and just go all in to buy that field, you will experience it. And that pearl of great price, we learn in the scriptures, is actually life with God through Jesus Christ. And if you experience that, suddenly, well, steaks are great. They're not that great. So you start to say things like, whatever were gains to me, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. What's more, I consider everything a loss compared to the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. I consider them garbage. I want to know Christ. You say things like, Brother Lawrence, he says, sometimes my thoughts wander away from God by necessity or infirmity, but soon an inner desire brings me back to God. And this inner yearning is so delightful and so delicious that I'm ashamed to describe it. Like it's more delicious than any steak you could ever tempt me with. So as wonderful as steaks are, they cannot give you the life that is truly life. Only Jesus can do that. Let me be clear. But I also don't want to minimize the symbol either. Because this is a God-given symbol. God picked this for a reason. So let's say it a little more starkly. God didn't have to make cows taste so wonderful. But he did. He didn't have to pick a symbol that can only be found on the other side of death. But he did. He didn't have to make it so that the taste of fellowship with him demands that we take a broken body, we eat it and bring it into ourselves so that we can experience life. He didn't have to do that, but he did. And I'm just suggesting that this isn't accidental. So in Leviticus chapter 17, God will actually make this explicit connection between eating red meat and experiencing his presence. It's explicit. For 40 years, he says, while you're in the wilderness, the only time you may ever slaughter a cow, a goat, or a sheep, all your domestic animals, the only time you can ever taste them is in my presence, is at the peace offering, the fellowship offering, the offering of many shaloms, that you may never eat those apart from my presence. So we see from the beginning that this is directly connected, and it's not until they're getting ready to enter the promised land and everyone's going to live far away from the temple that Moses says, okay, we're going to relax it. You can actually slaughter those at home, but you be so careful that when you're sitting in your backyard at your barbecue and you eat this wonderful steak, you be careful that you do not forget God. Don't think I did this or I deserve this or I earned this. You remember that every good and perfect gift is from above. You see, in the scriptures, God invites us to experience a taste of his lavish goodness through steaks. They are a taste of like friendship and family and belonging and acceptance and joy and goodness and celebration. They're a taste of life with God, a life that can only be found on the other side of the altar. of surrender, of shed blood. Somebody's got to die in order that you can live. And so for thousands of years, the Israelite people learned, somebody's got to die in order that I can live. And in this way, stakes then begin to point to this greater reality. They point us to an unseen spiritual reality. Until one day, someone shows up and says, whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life. That's where you get life. And I will raise them up on the last day, for my flesh is real food and my blood is real drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me and I in them. That if you want to experience life with God, if you want to experience that fellowship joy, that if you want to know who you are and whose you are, that you belong, that you have a place, that you have a seat at the table, then he says, I must die. And yet you have to feast on me. I have to be your unblemished sacrifice. I have to be your food. You can only eat at the table of God because of me. And then at the Last Supper, he picks up the cup and says, this is my blood of the covenant. He's quoting Moses from Exodus chapter 24. But he doesn't exactly quote it. He doesn't say, this is the blood of the covenant. This is my blood of the covenant. My blood has to be shed so that you can enter into a new covenant, a new relationship with God. The only way you can get to that table is through my blood. If my blood will be shed for you, I have to die in order that you can live. And then in this unimaginable, unfathomable, something that just doesn't make sense, it is reckless, prodigal, gratuitous. The God of the universe chooses voluntarily to lay down his life for you, for me. His blood drains out of his body on the cross. And now all who lean on him, who identify with him, who come to him in humility, confessing their sins, all who mourn are blessed because there's power in the blood. And they're invited into a new covenant with God, and the same Jesus who was once dead but is now alive invites us, all who have been washed in the blood of the Lamb, language of John there, all who've been washed in the blood of the Lamb, come. I got a feast I want to invite you to. You got to taste this for yourself. God's lavish, pressed down, shaken together, running over goodness, his favor towards you, his grace. You have to experience life with God. You have to experientially know you're wanted. You got a seat at this table. You are part. God has great joy in celebrating with you. He's lavishly good towards you. He has favor towards you. Now, if you're sitting there and saying, Paul, that sounds amazing, but it just doesn't feel true. I don't feel like God's good to me. I don't see God's goodness in my life. Well, what if I'm not experiencing this? A couple things could be true. One could be that you have things out of order. Remember, you only get to the table after the altar. It starts with the shedding. It starts in a place of complete surrender. Blessed are those who mourn, they will be comforted. It starts with mourning. That if you haven't put your life underneath the foot of the cross, under the shed blood of Christ, and leaned on him and confessed, God, I can't do this, I'm broken. If you haven't admitted your need for him and surrendered everything to him, you can't begin to experience what he's truly offering in this life. So it could be that you're just out of order. You got to start at the cross, and then you can come to the table. Could be that. Or maybe you have given your life to Christ and you're still not experiencing that. And it could be you're normal. Yeah, we live in a fallen, broken world, and there are seasons. And there are times when I taste God's goodness and it is so clear, like I am in his presence, is breaking through, bursting in on me right now. And there are other times that are dry. There are seasons of mourning, seasons of desolation, seasons that are just hard. And that is part of life. And God, he's there too. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me. So God is there too. He hasn't abandoned you. And there are seasons, there are going to be highs and lows. There are times you'll experience it more or less. But third, let me say, so the altar comes first. It might just be your season of life. Third, though, there is a discipline to this. So God doesn't just say, yeah, when you have some good experience, you should think happy thoughts, and that's an experience with me. He doesn't say that. No, he tells his people 3 times a year, 3 times, you are going to shut down your life. You're going to completely shut down your life. You're going to come to my house, and you are going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a big blowout party where there's going to be singing and dancing and more food than you can possibly eat. You're going to do that at least 3 times a year. You are going to do that, or I'm going to kill you. He literally says that. You have to do this. Now, I want you to reflect on that. God commands them. This has to be part of your rhythm of life. Well, it's no longer true that we live under the Old Testament law and we don't have to do this, but do you think that maybe, just maybe, God's trying to tell us something here? In that classic work on the Christian spiritual disciplines called The Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster, a book that changed my life. You should all read it if you haven't. But he points out, he goes through all these different spiritual disciplines, fasting and praying and meditation, all these traditional Christian disciplines. And you know where he ends? Celebration. It's a discipline. You actually have to make time. You actually have to invest in this. So if you have not recently tasted the goodness of God in your life, here's my assignment for you. I'm telling you what to do right now, okay? You guys ready? Take notes. You can tell people, my pastor told me to do this. I have to do this for my soul's sake, okay? I want you to go to Costco. I want to get one of those big carts, not like those little like normal carts. I want you to get one of those like push carts that you put like furniture on. I want you to go to the steak section. I want you to load that thing up as many as you can possibly do. I don't know how you're going to pay for it. Blessings on you. And then I want you to take that home, and I want you to fire up multiple barbecues if you can. And I want you to cook them all up perfectly. No, well done, please. This is for God. Medium rare, that's perfect. And then I want you to say, we've got 2 days, set a timer. And I want you to invite everyone you can over, and I want you to push them on everyone you can, and I want you to crank up the music, and I want you to laugh and dance, and I want to make sure that you take time to tell your story. Tell the story of how God's been good to you. And see if that doesn't give you a taste. It's not the real thing. It's not the full thing. Jesus can only bring the full thing. But see if that does not give you a taste of the goodness of God to us.